Stock that's plummeting, shareholder investigations, canceled live service, and refunding pre-orders. How did Ubisoft, a company once praised for beloved IPs and ambitious titles, get here? In the consumer-driven gaming industry, every dollar spent counts. It's a player's vote in the ballot box that says, "We like this, keep giving us this," or "Dear God, this is awful, stick this in a landfill, I never want to see it again." When it comes to modern-day Ubisoft and the decisions that they've made, did the players cast their votes? But what did they vote for? Or in Ubisoft's case, really, what did they vote against that put Ubisoft into a verifiably full-blown panic that we're going to review in detail? Let's get into it. To understand what Ubisoft did wrong, first we have to acknowledge their success. I bet every one of you watching this right now can think of at least one Ubisoft title that you loved at some point in time. Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon, Assassin's Creed, Rayman, the list goes on for games and franchises that more than earned their places in the libraries of gamers everywhere. They recognized their winning formulas and doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on them. And this is great, right? I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, no. The money might have been flowing in, but Ubisoft didn't realize they were making a critical mistake. Here's how Andrew Grove, the former CEO of Intel, puts it: success breeds complacency. Complacency breeds failure. Only the paranoid survive. Robert Zell of Brasscraft: complacency is the enemy of excellence. The company that is never quite satisfied is the company that satisfies. This doesn't look like an overnight thing for Ubisoft, more of an overtime observation, but the beginning of the end was Ubisoft's refusal to innovate. Annual releases and sequels that are near carbon copies of their predecessors, slapping the Assassin's Creed name onto Wish.com Witcher with gear levels and microtransactions and calling it Series Evolution. Except you, Mirage, you can stay. Or in XDefiant's case, blatantly ripping off Call of Duty. Not only was Ubisoft complacent in the games they were making, but the players were getting complacent in being excited for them too. We already know how every Ubisoft game will look before it's even released, regardless of the franchise it's in. For single player, we know we'll be traveling across a mostly empty open world, we know we'll be repeating monotonous side missions, and we know there will be stealth mechanics, but what environment will it be in this time? Will the buildings I'm passing by on my way to the new fast travel point 100 times look Japanese or science fiction-y? Will my character model be a backpacked soldier or a hooded assassin when I'm infiltrating the same enemy outpost I've infiltrated in every Ubisoft game since 2006? Repeated mechanics across sequels is fine, in fact that's what helps give franchises their own identity. But when Ubisoft does this every year, for every game they make, there's no longer franchise identity. Now it's just the Ubisoft identity.
I lost something once. My identity.
They played it safe for too long, now players are sick of the lack of variety. But Ubisoft didn't care. Yet. Enough people were still forking over money for their games, or, excuse me, a license to use their games that may or may not be revoked at any time. So Ubisoft had no problem ignoring the stale game design criticisms. Until the money stopped coming in, and the Ubisoft shareholder meetings went into full panic. And with this, we actually can point to a specific point in time. 2024 has not been a good year for Ubisoft. That's too nice, let's try that again. In 2024, Ubisoft is the barely surviving victim of what I'll call the clappening. And the culprit? It started out decent with the Prince of Persia Lost Crown in January, but likely thanks to only releasing on Steam and having the marketing budget of 2 paper clips and a piece of string, the sales just didn't keep up with the reviews, and the team behind it was split up by Ubisoft. Then February rolls around and bam, Skull and Bones. I go more in depth on that game in the Don't Pre-Order Ubisoft video, but we all knew that game was going to be cheeks. 11 years and reportedly $200 million down the drain right out of the gates, or up to $800 million if Endymion's reporting on an anonymous source is accurate, and right after December's Frontiers of Pandora that failed to make a splash, Ubisoft probably needed the remaining 2024 lineup to recover. And how did that go? Well, there's XDefiant, a game I do actually enjoy as a casual, play every once in a while FPS, but it's seen less player retention than the DMV.
We
We are interrupting this already edited video to bring you hot off the press. XDefiant is shutting down. I repeat, down goes XDefiant. Oh, the humanity. Despite just recently denying rumors that XDefiant was losing support soon due to a low player count, Mark Rubin made the announcement on Twitter. XDefiant is shutting down in June of 2025. No more new downloads or account registrations as of the time of this tweet, December 3rd, 2024. Anyone who purchased the Ultimate Founders Pack is getting reimbursed, and any purchases in the last 30 days are getting refunded. I never thought that this clip of mine would be this relevant this fast. Don't know why anyone would want to pay them, because Ubisoft could take this game from us at any time, but hey, that's just me.
I love stealing.
Check it out though before it doesn't make enough money and gets shut down in a couple of years. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a prophet. XDefiant marks the second high-profile live service game being shut down prematurely just in the last couple of months. Hey, at least this one will have lasted a whole year instead of a whole week, I guess. With XDefiant specifically, it turns out that COD without skill-based is not enough to win people's commitment when your drip-fed content isn't dripping fast enough and your faulty netcode is still screwing with people's shot registration. You know, the main thing you do in a shooter, so naturally the game is struggling. Ubisoft wanted to compete with Call of Duty, but they're too caught up in their own congratulatory echo chamber to acknowledge the bare necessities that are needed to make players happy. They gambled their money on a free-to-play live service game, and they're losing. And this wasn't even the casino's fault. Ubisoft keeps going all in on a crap hand even though their buddies are standing over them telling them to stop.
I did it because I liked it. Hell, I love it. I'm itching to do it again.
To further my point, XDefiant is far from the only failure poking holes in Ubisoft's piggy bank in 2024. Take a look at Star Wars Outlaws. They took a well-established IP, bent and twisted and contorted it into having the Ubisoft formula, and how did that go? Well, if you ask the influencers who promoted it in exchange for money and free vacations, it went great. More on that in another video. But if you ask the average player, it was arguably the biggest fumble Ubisoft has had in years. Stick a Darth Vader helmet on a big pile of poop, it's still a big pile of poop. Not the Star Wars IP, not paying content creators to promote the game, not hundreds of millions in development and marketing costs, and not pushing players to subscribe to Ubisoft Plus for extra content could make players ignore the dated stealth mechanics and copy and paste nature of the Ubisoft game design. They say if you look at Ubisoft's stock at the time of Outlaws release, you can actually hear the sound of players collectively snapping their wallets shut. This financial shockwave of biblical proportion that was the players saying no to Star Wars Outlaws didn't stop with Star Wars Outlaws. After all, Ubisoft referenced the Metacritic score for Outlaws to try and gaslight us into thinking that the game was well received. What about the Metacritic user scores?
That's not good enough.
Why didn't you mention that? Well, it turns out when you make games for critics and not players, there aren't enough players to want to give you money. Shareholders now finally had a reason to bring the hammer down on Ubisoft. Their eyes turned toward the next game on the horizon. By the time Ubisoft realized the consequences of its own complacency, it was too late for Assassin's Creed Shadows. For one, they were too complacent to bother getting their Japanese inspiration right. There seem to be more issues than I can count with this, coming from people who I'm sure know Japanese history and culture way better than I do. But there's been accusations that some of the game's building architecture looks like they were more inspired by Chinese architecture than by Japanese. They got several items wrong, either because they weren't in that time period or are just depicted incorrectly. And apparently they botched the behavior of how a samurai would interact in a public space or fight. Now, I'm not going to be irresponsible and say that I know this for a fact, because I don't. But if this is true, the Assassin's Creed was never meant to be perfectly accurate argument is missing the point of the criticism. If you're not even going to try to get a culture right, or if you do try and then fail, the least you can do is respect it. Hey, at least Ubisoft apologized for getting the shapes of these mats in the trailer wrong. They promised to fix it before the game comes out, so that's a start, I guess. Look, guys, I know we used to pride ourselves on making a believable, immersive, historical setting.
So we took certain iconic elements like the Notre Dame, a couple other landmarks, and we said these landmarks to be fully believable and fully immersive. We need them to be at 1-to-1.
But this time, welcome to feudal Japan, have some hip hop.
Not while I have breath in my lungs and a blade in my hand. I said kill him.
Also, here's an obscure historical figure, Yasuke, whose significance to Japanese history and legitimacy as a samurai is, at best, academically debatable, and at worst, painfully speculative. Now, normally, nobody would care that an Assassin's Creed protagonist is fictional. I mean, they all have been so far, but Ubisoft was here to gaslight people into accepting Yasuke as a real-life historical superhero and chew bubblegum. And they were all out of bubblegum.
Yasuke is our first historical protagonist in Assassin's Creed. What we know about Yasuke historically is just a bit, but it was enough to get the team really excited about the opportunity to work with him as a character. Just a bit, but it was enough. He can fight his way out of anything, but he's also super smart and can think his way through things equally as well, and is going to be somebody who always has a commanding presence.
And he was the greatest samurai ever and was super cool and cured Santa's cancer to save Christmas. Thank you for saving Christmas, Yasuke. Look, I don't know about you, but to me, it doesn't look so great when the guy who's the source of the latest Yasuke samurai lore, Thomas Lockley, is outed as most likely being the one who edited Yasuke's Wikipedia and Britannica pages to insist he was a real samurai. Right on time to credit his own book about Yasuke as a source, might I add. Then disappears from the internet when the Yasuke samurai debate is traced back to him as its bedrock. He turned a couple of paragraphs of text he found into over 400 pages of book he could sell.
Most of the evidence had already been collected by other people, but it needed to be interpreted. It needed to be put in context. And it's only, at that time, not so much was known about him. So it was only a few paragraphs, maybe a couple of pages, something like that.
In comparison to this.
Now it's 440 odd pages. Yeah.
This man's like Jesus feeding 5,000 people with a couple pieces of fish and bread, you know, without the savior of humanity part. Very impressive, Thomas. Very impressive. It is a huge rabbit hole that we won't go any further down today, but bottom line, it is a shaky stance to confidently claim that we know much of anything about Yasuke. It just didn't seem right for Ubisoft to break the franchise's 2-game streak of letting you choose between two characters that are native to the culture, while insisting on their excitement that the character they did choose is a real historical character, just not a Japanese one in their game set in Japan. Well, that's too bad, because he's one of our main characters instead of any other verifiable Japanese historical figure because... Can I say it? Are we allowed to say it?
I'm about to say it.
Say it.
Because he's black.
Stop! You violated the law.
If you're not sure if Yasuke's casting and them playing hard defense over it is anything more than innocent coincidence, let me remind you that he was chosen to be a main character during this game's early development back in 2020, reportedly replacing the Japanese male character that was already planned for the game. And if you think about what was going on in the world at the time and how corporations were quick to try and capitalize off of what they saw as a new, powerfully passionate demographic of potential customers, it ought to make a little more sense. It's not their passion.
It's just good business.
And they're so out of touch when they do it. Pairing playing as Yasuke with a hip-hop soundtrack reminds me so much of
the way he leaps off of rooftops and flips backwards to face the camera before falling into a headfirst dive is just full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
In a post-Black Lives Matter world, there is only one acceptable response to a white man shooting waves of Africans for an entire video game. No.
How do you do, fellow
black people?
And look, I'm not going to be offended on someone else's behalf. I'm just reading what I'm seeing, but it seems like at the very least, a very vocal plurality of Japanese gamers aren't taking too kindly to finally getting an Assassin's Creed game based in their country, only for it to not bother respecting a culture that takes the concept of respect very seriously. To the point where disgruntled gamers there have asked their government to investigate the game. Don't know what that means, but it ain't congratulatory. There's a change.org petition that suggests the game might be linked to Asian racism and demands Ubisoft cancel the game, and it's reached over 100,000 signatures. And Ubisoft put out a formal statement to the Japanese players that can be translated as,
"I'm sorry you feel that way."
You know, the go-to non-apology when you want to end the argument, but you're not actually sorry for anything. I'm not sorry for what I did. In fact, I'm gonna do it even harder, but I'm sorry you got upset. I swear to all of you, this is not a political channel. I'm not the one inserting this stuff into gaming. It's them, not me. Fine. Future editor Kinger with longer hair is gonna flip a coin. Heads, I start pretending that social agenda doesn't exist in the video game business so that I can be inoffensive to viewers and sponsors. Tails, I'm gonna start over-exaggerating the problem and become a screaming caricature of a channel to win over a passionate niche. Go ahead, future editor Kinger with longer hair. Alright, back to Assassin's Creed Shadows. And then here's Ubisoft using other people's art without permission and possibly shamelessly jacking a katana design from One Piece. And for good freaking measure, here's imagery that appears to be associated with atomic bombs in the merchandise of their game that takes place hundreds of years before atomic bombs even existed. Okay, stop right there. Did Ubisoft use AI to just pull random crap from the internet to make this game, or are they really that narrow-minded in the way they look at Japan? I mean, they had to have brought in a consultant for this stuff, right? Right? Oh, that was just one consultant. There was another one who said in the New York Times that it was just people in the West who cared about Yasuke being a samurai. Ubisoft had been just ignoring the criticisms of Shadows since they announced it, but now with their pile of recent failures topped off by Star Wars Outlaws, they had to act. But by this point, September of 2024, it was too late to pull the plug on the massive investment that was Assassin's Creed Shadows. So my god, did their response speak volumes about how desperate they finally realized they were. 2 months before Shadows launch, Ubisoft did the unthinkable. First, they dropped out of the 2024 Tokyo Game Show due to various circumstances. Speculation was that Ubisoft just didn't need to show off the game there, but common sense says they knew that the sentiment from Japan around their game set in Japan was in the toilet.
Why'd I eat that fourth burrito?
So they passed on the event. Then they delayed the game from November of 2024 to February of 2025. Pre-orders, all 7 of you, you're getting your money back. I'm joking about that number, but if rumors are true, Ubisoft was struggling to get pre-orders for this thing. Less than 800 units total, or roundabout 7% of the pre-orders they got for Valhalla. Again, both of those numbers are just rumors, so grains of salt all around. Was this delay to reduce Yasuke's role in the game, as also rumored? No, I doubt it. They're probably too far along for that. If anything, I'm guessing the priority really is to do bug fixes, like the CEO said they were gonna do, and I could see them making some changes regarding people's criticisms, like removing the hip-hop or altering some in-game assets to be more reflective of Japanese culture, like the architecture. But why delay their game to compete with Monster Hunter Wilds and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 in February, instead of just fixing it after launch like they did with Outlaws? Well, historically, Ubisoft hasn't really cared about launching games that weren't ready, but that was when they thought they were too big to fail. Now, after the failures of 2024 so far and their stock dropping to the depths of Davy Jones' locker, I think they realized that they literally can't afford for Shadows to launch in a broken state. So they're doing what they always should have done and taking the extra time to make it launch ready. But if nothing else from that, just take this away. The people out there who paid up to $130 for a pre-order, Ubisoft was ready to ship you a game so unfinished, it warranted another 3 months of development time, and you still gave them your money anyway.
See you, chump. What the hell?
We'll see how the final product works out, I guess. What is it, Winnie? I'm gonna go ahead and take them outside.
Come on, you buddy.
Sorry about that. Guess I'll put my ring on. I told my wife I would. But that's not all Ubisoft did. Instead of avoiding Steam launches to push people to Ubisoft Plus anymore, Shadows will be available on Steam day one. In fact, they're changing to day one Steam launches for all of their games moving forward. A change of heart, perhaps? No. This is Ubisoft finally recognizing that they're not in a position to create artificial barriers for consumers anymore, so they're throwing in the towel and putting the game where the overwhelming majority of PC players download their games anyway. Imagine having to learn the hard way that was a stupid idea. But like a Darth Vader helmet can't turn poop into chocolate, neither can a Steam launch. Not even a 25% discount could get Star Wars Outlaws peak players over 2,500. It's almost like you can't use popular IPs to take shortcuts and you still need to just make a good game? Nah, that can't be it. It's the
incels.
That's what she looks like? This is the protagonist of Star Wars Outlaws? Ubisoft transformed a beautiful female model into literally a broom.
Incel.
And finally, to address the elephant in the room regarding Ubisoft pushing social agendas, the CEO said this, quote, "I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment-first company, creating games for the broadest possible audience, and our goal is not to push any specific agenda. We remain committed to creating games for fans and players that everyone can enjoy." Translation, here's some words, but we're not changing anything. We remain committed. So if you hate us, and if you like us, you like us. And what happens when players vote with their wallets against this messaging or stale game design or hilariously bad research into their games? Well, first, the CEO blames the players for having too high of expectations. Delivering solid quality is no longer enough, you see. I mean, this isn't surprising to us by now, right? So you're telling me that Skull and Bones was solid quality? Yeah, this is solid quality, Star Wars Outlaws. XDefiant can lose support if player count doesn't improve. Solid quality, so that's actual gaslighting. I'd hate to see what Ubisoft thinks is loose quality. But no need for us to retaliate because, in response, the investors straight up launch an investigation into why Ubisoft is sucking eggs in its sales. And one of them openly states they want the company to go private and change its leadership.
Are you frightened? Yes. Not nearly frightened enough.
In that same open letter, they accuse the CEO and Tencent of intentionally undervaluing Ubisoft so that they can buy more shares at a reduced price. Whether or not it's true is up for debate, but either way, Ubisoft is a house that has divided into utter chaos. And it's all thanks to players saying no. That's right, don't ever let someone in my comments tell you that voting with your wallets will never work. This, along with Sony's failure with Concord, is giving us a real-time illustration of what happens when players say, enough. We know you're not listening to us, so we're gonna stop giving you money. People have been voicing criticisms of Assassin's Creed Shadows for months, and Ubisoft in general for years, and what finally made them act was poor sales and plummeting stock prices. And I hear the point of, we shouldn't celebrate when games fail, but dog, yes we should. If the game or company behind it is bad, lazy, or anti-consumer, Ubisoft, I'm not gonna pretend to like bad products. That's how we get more bad products. Toxic positivity is why AAA gaming's in the state that it's in today. Don't praise the slop. Condemn it so they'll stop giving us slop. It really is that simple, and it's why I make the videos I do. So, with Ubisoft actively sabotaging itself with its constant dismissal of criticism and conveyor belt of generic copy and paste games, just remember, we decide which trends continue and which ones end up in a landfill. I don't know the order I'm going to release these yet, but when I finish the Ubisoft bribed influencers video, I'm going to put it right here. As always, thanks for watching. Carry on, you kings. I am under 30 years old, but I have the hair of a 58-year-old man. I've had this hair since like 5th grade, so it's not getting any higher.